Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the chilly, incense-scented corridors of a Korean mountain temple. Not the grand, golden roof kind tourists visit in autumn, but a real, working monastery. The kind with creaky wooden floors, soot-stained lanterns, and weathered monks who can meditate longer than you've ever held a Zoom call. You're not here to admire the architecture, though. You're here for breakfast, or rather, to earn it. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this without craving a midnight snack. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere across the globe, post your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far these bedtime travels reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes before the sun dares peek over the mountain ridge. The air in the room is cold and damp, thick with the scent of burning pine from a fire that died hours ago. Your sleeping mat feels like a sheet of paper on stone. You sit up, bones cracking in protest, and realize something important. You're starving. Not just snacky, but proper pit in your stomach hungry. Your fingers brush the floor, rough timber warmed only by your own breath. There's no heater, no fuzzy socks, no hope of a sneaky granola bar. The temple doesn't do snacks. It barely does cushions. You shuffle to your feet and step out of the cell-like chamber. No one talks. A few figures pass you in the pale light, wrapped in loose, gray robes that whisper against the floor. The smell of old fabric and sandalwood clings to everything. A gust of icy wind cuts through the corridor as a door slides open. Your bare feet slap the polished floor. You wish you'd remembered your straw slippers. Outside, the sky is still dark. A handful of stars cling to the edges of the horizon like sleepy sparks. The mountains are silent, as if they're listening. You are part of something bigger now, something ancient, older than your grumbling stomach. A deep dong echoes through the air. The Moktak bell. Once, twice, 3 times. That's the call. Not to breakfast. Don't get your hopes up, but to the first meditation of the day. A solid hour of sitting still. Yes, before you eat. Apparently, Buddhist compassion begins with discipline and ends with an extremely flat butt. You file into the Dharma hall. It's vast and spare. Pillars like trees, floors like ice. A row of painted bodhisattvas stare down with mild amusement as you kneel onto your mat and fold your legs. The silence is total. Not even a cough. Just the occasional creak of someone's bones or the distant snap of frost outside. You close your eyes and try not to think about rice. But of course, you do think about rice. Steaming bowls of it, sticky and soft. Maybe with a side of radish kimchi. Maybe a hint of soy sauce. And soup. Oh, hot broth. Clear and salty. You imagine sipping it from a lacquered bowl, steam fogging your glasses if you had them. Instead, you breathe. In, out. The hunger tightens, gnawing like a small, polite ghost. But you stay still because that's what everyone else is doing. And in temples, peer pressure has the weight of eternity. Time slows. Or maybe it stops. Then, just when you're convinced your spine has permanently fossilized, the bell rings again. You bow stretch stand. Someone behind you farts very quietly and with deep spiritual detachment. You file out, blinking at the soft light of dawn. The mountains glow now, the edges kissed with pink. Birds begin to chirp. And far away, yes, you smell it. Cooked rice. That nutty, slightly burnt scent wafts from the kitchen courtyard like a miracle wrapped in steam. You try not to sprint. The kitchen team, Lucky Ducks, has been up since before you, tending to giant clay pots balanced over open fires. The smoke stings your nose, but it's the most delicious pain you've ever felt. Now, let's take a beat here. Historically speaking, rice was, and still is, the backbone of Korean meals. But medieval monks didn't eat polished white rice like the aristocrats. No, they got the hearty stuff, short grain brown, sometimes cracked or mixed with barley. It filled the belly and kept for longer. Tasted nuttier, too. And if you were really lucky, it hadn't picked up too much ash from the fire. Historians still argue whether monastic rice was deliberately left unpolished as a form of humility, or if the temple simply couldn't afford the fancier stuff. Either way, your breakfast won't sparkle, but it will satisfy. You line up with the others, wooden bowls cradled in your hands. The kitchen monk ladles rice into each one with a small bow. He's wearing the same robe as you, only his sleeves are permanently stained from years of stirring and serving. Your portion lands with a heavy plop. It doesn't look like much, but it's warm, really warm. Your fingers almost tremble around the bowl. No one eats yet. You follow the group to the open hall, where mats have been set in perfect rows. You kneel again. Wait. Another bell. A final bow. And then, blessedly, you raise your spoon. The first bite is everything. Soft grains, faintly sweet from the steam, with a chew that demands respect. It's not fluffy like a sushi roll. It's grounded, honest, ancient. You eat slowly. There's no wolfing anything down in a monastery. Each bite is a moment. Each spoonful, a kind of prayer. The hunger calms, replaced with warmth. No phones, no screens, no TV murmuring in the background. Just the steady clack of spoons, the creak of old beams, and the rustle of robes. You're still a little cold, still tired, but your belly is no longer empty, and you're beginning to understand something. In this world, breakfast isn't a convenience. It's a ritual. The rice settles warmly in your belly, and you feel the faintest buzz of life returning to your limbs. Not energy, exactly, more like the cautious truce your stomach has made with your soul. You've eaten just enough to quiet the complaints, but not so much that the body gets lazy. That's the monk way. Hunger isn't something to be feared here. It's a tool, a teacher, a really annoying one sometimes, but a teacher nonetheless. And right now, your teacher is telling you, don't get too comfortable, because the next part of the morning isn't nap time. It's movement time. The mock tax sounds again, its wooden clack echoing through the courtyard like a rooster with rhythm. You rise, roll your shoulders, and follow the others through a narrow stone corridor lit only by rising sun and memory. There's a breeze, and with it the clean scent of pine needles with smoke and, okay, fine, there's still a little burnt rice. You step into the main hall again, not for another meditation, thankfully, but for 108 bows. Yes, 108. It's a full-body exercise disguised as a spiritual practice, which is clever. Buddhism has a way of doing that, folding the sacred into the sweaty. You line up on your mat, spread your feet, and begin. Stand. Kneel. Forehead to floor. Hands raised. Up again. That's one. Now do it 107 more times. Your knees groan. Your thighs protest. You think your hip might pop like a cork. But you keep going, because everyone around you is doing it. And there's something strangely beautiful about 30 sleepy monks bowing in unison, breathing like wind through reeds. By the time you finish, your robe sticks to your back, your face shines with sweat, and, oddly, you're hungry again. You're not alone. As the bowing ends, a subtle wave of side eyes travels toward the kitchen. No one says it aloud, but everyone's thinking the same thing. Is there more food? And this, dear visitor, is where we must talk about second breakfast. Yes, it exists. Sort of. After the early rice and side dishes, there's often a brief window before work duty where a small bonus meal might be offered, especially during colder months or high-activity days. Maybe some leftover soup. Maybe a handful of steamed barley grains sprinkled with sesame salt. If a visiting monk arrived last night, there might even be roasted sweet potatoes from the hearth, wrapped in ash-blackened skins, soft as butter inside. Historians still argue whether this extra bite was officially sanctioned or just quietly accepted. Some monasteries logged it. Others didn't. Some believe it was only for monks in heavy labor roles. Others say it was offered out of basic compassion. One record from a 14th century mountain temple even lists morning snacks next to ink brush expenses, which frankly sounds like the best office policy ever. You trail behind a senior monk toward the back kitchen. The fires are still going, though dimmer now. A heavy iron pot sits nestled in glowing coals. The monk, sleeves pushed high, lifts the lid. Steam erupts. Inside is juke, rice porridge. Thin, pale, a little sad-looking but soothing. He ladles you a small bowl, just enough to warm the palms. A few pine nuts float lazily on top, along with a ribbon of sesame oil that smells like heaven in a temple that bans garlic. You sip, carefully, slowly. The heat glides down your throat and settles somewhere near your heart. Juke isn't fancy. It's poor food, sickbed food, winter food. But it's also comfort food. And monks know that comfort, in moderation, has its place. A spoonful of kindness, after all, doesn't ruin your discipline. It just helps you keep going. You thank him with a bow and find a step to sit on, watching the mountains brighten. The snow on the far ridge catches fire in the morning light. Birds chatter. A magpie hops across the frozen flagstones, pecks at a breadcrumb, and eyes you like you might be competition. You eat your porridge and watch your breath rise in white curls. And for a few minutes, everything is simple. Then comes the bell again, and you know what that means. Time to work. Every monk has a role, and yours today is to carry firewood. Not exactly glamorous, but someone has to fuel those kitchen flames. And it's either you or that magpie, who frankly looks unreliable. You trudge toward the woodshed behind the temple, where stacks of split pine logs wait, some dusted in frost. The scent is sharp, resinous, clean. You haul a load into your arms and stagger back toward the kitchen. Try not to trip on your robe or look like a newbie in front of the senior monks. As you pass the kitchen window, you glimpse the next shift preparing side dishes for tomorrow's breakfast. There's a basket of dried radish curls, soaked and glossy now. Another monk slices lotus root into paper-thin discs. The rhythm of the knife is mesmerizing, soft thap, thap, thap like a heartbeat made of vegetables. You remember what you ate this morning. The radish kimchi, fermented just enough to tingle your lips. The strips of seaweed brushed with sesame oil and roasted over hot stone. The pickled burdock root, earthy and oddly sweet. None of it flashy, all of it nourishing. It said that temple food reflects temple life. Plain, repetitive, but full of care. Every bowl, every bite is part of the practice. Even the miso soup had depth to it. Not miso, exactly. Korean monks call it doenjang, a fermented soybean paste that bubbles away for months in ceramic ongi jars behind the main kitchen. A scoop of that paste, thinned with hot water, a few slices of radish, maybe some shredded kelp, and voila, monk's broth. It's umami without ego, protein without meat, warmth without spice. But don't worry, we'll get to spice. Eventually. For now, your arms are aching from firewood duty. Your cheeks are red from wind and pride, and your belly is quietly gurgling in anticipation of whatever's next. The morning still stretches ahead. You haven't swept the meditation hall yet, or helped boil the barley for tomorrow's gruel, or polished the bowls that will be used again before dawn. But you're beginning to see how it all connects. Breakfast, in this world, isn't just fuel. It's rhythm. It's ritual. It's the hum that starts the chant. You're back in the courtyard, sleeves rolled and firewood stacked. The rice in your belly has begun its slow fade into memory, replaced by the sharper awareness of air and ash. There's a quiet shift now, the sun rising just high enough to warm the backs of your hands. Shadows shorten, crows caw from the roof, and inside the kitchen, someone lifts the lid of a fresh pot. Steam pours upward in a fragrant plume, and you know what that means. The second batch of rice is on. In this monastery, rice is the heartbeat. It's not just part of breakfast, it is breakfast. Always the centerpiece, even when everything else around it changes with season, with fortune, or with the kitchen monk's mood. You step into the rear storeroom, where burlap sacks lean heavy against stone walls. Inside, the rice is coarse and golden brown, nothing like the polished grains of palace life. These are field grains, speckled with dust and the occasional stray pebble. There's a basket and a hand crank winnower in the corner, and a young monk bent over a basin, washing the grains in cold water. He lifts the rice, swirls it, drains it. Again and again. The water goes cloudy, then less so, then clear as melted snow. No machines, no shortcuts, just repetition and purpose. You take over for a while. Your fingers plunge into the cool basin. The rice is rough and uneven, cracked here, stubborn there. But there's something meditative about the task. You swirl, you rinse, you think. You try not to drop the bowl. When the rice is clean, it's poured into a heavy black iron cauldron set over a 3-stone fire. Someone adds water from a wooden bucket. The lid clanks into place. You feed the fire a few more logs and watch the smoke drift upward, curling like incense into the rafters. The monk beside you hums softly, a melody with no words, just rhythm. Historians still argue whether monastic rice recipes varied significantly from region to region, or whether every temple followed the same basic preparation. What is agreed upon is this: rice was non-negotiable. Even during times of war or famine, monks found ways to source it, trade for it, or supplement it with grains like millet or barley. Rice meant continuity. It meant stability. And in this case, it means you're about 20 minutes away from a second breakfast, or, more accurately, the continuation of the first. The smell begins to rise, toasted, earthy, with a faint nuttiness that makes your mouth water even before the pot is opened. This isn't the delicate snow-white rice of aristocrats. It's dense, almost chewy, with the occasional surprise crunch of half-popped grain. A senior monk appears, as if summoned by scent alone. He's older than anyone you've seen so far, his robes patched and his hands stained permanently by years of soy and smoke. He peers into the pot without lifting the lid, then grunts approvingly. You know, he murmurs, voice dry as parchment. You can judge a monk's heart by his rice. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you nod anyway because it sounds wise. As the pot finishes, he ladles a single scoop into a wooden bowl. Then he gestures toward a nearby shelf lined with tiny ceramic jars. Pick one. You look. There are about 10 to choose from, each sealed with waxed linen or a carved wooden lid. You reach for one at random. The lid slides free with a soft pop, revealing a dense, glistening mass of deep green. Yung jorum, he says. Burdock root simmered in soy. Good for the stomach. He spoons a small amount next to the rice, then gestures to the others. A fermented soybean mash, pickled mustard leaves, a dish of dried anchovies in sweet soy glaze, braised lotus root, and your personal favorite, crispy laver seaweed, black as midnight and brushed with roasted sesame oil. Each dish fits in a bowl no bigger than your palm. And yet, together, they're a mosaic. A spectrum of flavor, salt, tang, bitter, sweet. An orchestra that plays under the rice, not over it. You carry the tray back to the hall. Others are already seated. You kneel again. Another bow. Another silent wait. This time, the soup is thinner. Clear broth with daikon slices and a single floating sliver of dried chili. You eat slowly. The rice clumps gently on your spoon. You press it against your tongue and let the flavor unfold. It's humble, honest, like eating the earth itself, but in the best way. The side dishes sing in contrast. Sharp bursts of vinegar, the slight sting of chili, the mellow smoothness of sesame. There's no meat, no garlic, no onion. The 5 pungent roots forbidden in temple kitchens remain firmly off the table. But let's not pretend this food is bland. Monks get creative. Over centuries, they developed tricks, fermentation, layering of soy-based sauces, clever use of toasted seeds, and medicinal herbs. They found flavor in patience, in aging, in combinations that coaxed depth from simplicity. And yes, they knew how to push the rules a little. Some temple records hint at monks sneaking in ginger or chive. Not in defiance, exactly, more like culinary curiosity. Or, let's be honest, the occasional hungry tantrum. One fringe account from the Goryeo period even claims that a particularly ambitious monk invented a proto-version of gochujang, Korean chili paste, in secret, using fermented red bean and a wild chili variant found growing near the southern coast. Most historians raise their eyebrows at that. But still, imagine. You pause mid-bite to consider this. How different your meal would be with one little clove of garlic. Just one. But no, not today. Not here. The bowl empties too quickly. You sip the last of the broth. Slide the spoon gently over the bottom of the bowl. Not to scrape, but to thank. One of the monks once said that even grains have karma. To leave one behind is to dishonor the work that went into it. The planting, the harvesting, the cooking. You bow again. Then, you rise and carry your empty bowls back to the water trough outside. There's a shallow basin filled with hot water and a rag made from old robes. You rinse carefully. No swap, just mindfulness. A soft scrubbing of surface and self. A monk beside you whispers, "This was the good batch. No burnt bottom today." You smile. Somehow, that tiny note of joy, a perfect pot of rice, is more satisfying than any spice. And as you walk away from the kitchen, back toward your next duty, the scent of sesame still lingers on your sleeve. The day is unfolding, and you're already looking forward to tomorrow's bowl. The sky has fully bloomed now, no longer pale gray, but a clean, crisp blue, edged by the evergreen shoulders of the mountains. Somewhere far above, a hawk circles, silent as thought. The monastery is wide awake. You, meanwhile, are somewhere between full and floaty. You've eaten rice, porridge, roots, broth, and half a teaspoon of something that tasted like spicy pine and regret. You're also officially on dish duty. Welcome to the less glamorous side of temple cuisine, cleaning up after it. You follow a line of monks to the water station near the back courtyard, where a low trough carved from stone is already steaming from freshly boiled water. There's no modern plumbing here, just fire, buckets, and discipline. Each person takes their turn, sleeves rolled high, hands plunged into the shallow basin. You receive a long-handled brush, horsehair bristles bound with cloth, and your first stack of lacquered bowls. These aren't plastic cafeteria trays. These are handmade, layered with care, dark red and black, each one slightly chipped from use but still glowing faintly in the sunlight. You scrub gently, not just to clean, but to avoid stripping the lacquer. It's surprisingly peaceful work. The warmth of the water seeps into your fingertips. The scent of soy and sesame hovers above the surface. You can still taste breakfast at the back of your throat, just a faint echo of salt and burdock. A monk to your left begins humming a tune that sounds like rain falling in slow motion. You catch yourself swaying to it as you rinse the final dish. And then it's time to dry. No towels here, just the air. You stack the bowls neatly on a slatted bamboo rack and step back. The sun hits them just right, and they gleam like embers. One of the senior monks gives a small, approving grunt. You pretend not to beam. Now, here's something you probably didn't expect. Monks don't just clean their own bowls. They often take turns washing up for everyone, especially during their early years. It's part of training. Service before self. You might not be allowed to speak, but your actions still shout. And here's your quirky historical tidbit for today. In some older temples, bowls were once licked clean by the monk eating from them, before rinsing with tea or warm water. No waste, no leftovers, no trace. It's not common now, but the idea remains. Food is sacred, and so is every grain that touched your lips. You stretch your back and look up. The kitchen smoke is thinning now, curling lazily against the tile roofs. Somewhere nearby, a handbell jingles softly. Not a summons, but a signal. Free hour. Well, not exactly free. This is a monastery, after all, but it's a window, a break in the discipline. You can choose to meditate, or sweep the garden, or, if you're like most new arrivals, gravitate back toward the kitchen like a moth to soy-scented flame. Because while the big breakfast is over, the prep for tomorrow's meal is just beginning. You duck around the corner and find the assistant kitchen monk, barely older than you, kneeling over a pile of dried kelp sheets. He looks up, sees you hovering, and nods once. An invitation. You kneel beside him, and he hands you a sheet, stiff, salty, crisp like ocean parchment. Your job is to brush each one with sesame oil using a handmade reed brush, then lay it over a heated stone slab. Not too hot, or it'll burn. Not too cool, or it won't crisp. A balance, just like everything else in this place. The smell hits you instantly. Toasted sea, warm oil, a hint of nuttiness. It's mesmerizing. You work slowly, reverently, like you're painting the world's simplest masterpiece. Some temples roast labor this way for nearly every meal, just 1 or 2 sheets per person, but it adds contrast. That whisper of briny crunch against the chewy rice. In winter, it's especially appreciated. A reminder of the sea, even up here in the mountains. Labor came by mule, the assistant monk whispers. You blink. What? He gestures at the stack. 2 days ago, from a coastal temple, we traded barley flour for it. You stare at the humble sheets, suddenly seeing them as treasure. Food doesn't just appear here. It travels. It's earned, shared. Historians still argue whether monastic supply chains in medieval Korea were centralized or temple-specific. Some records suggest that itinerant monks ferried ingredients between sites. Others claim each monastery grew or traded for what it needed, depending on climate, terrain, and generosity from local villagers. Either way, your snack just rode a donkey through a forest. Respect. Next to you, someone begins slicing dried radish. The knife is old but wickedly sharp. The slices fall in elegant fans, pale and sweet-smelling. They'll be rehydrated and simmered later in soy, rice syrup, and black pepper, another staple banchan. You move to help. One hand guides, one hand cuts. Your motions grow confident, rhythmic. For a moment, you forget you're starving again. And then, as if summoned by thought alone, the kitchen monk brings out a tray. It's not a meal, not even close, but it's a shared nibble. A few slivers of roasted sweet potato, amber and soft, the edges crisp from a hearth. A handful of puffed barley grains, and 2 steamed chestnuts, split open with a twist of the fingers. No one talks. You all just eat, gratefully. The sweet potato is perfection, earthy, caramelized, and so hot it nearly burns your fingers. The chestnut crumbles like butter. The puffed barley crackles between your teeth. And suddenly, your stomach sighs in satisfaction. The monk beside you offers a half smile. Not breakfast, he says, but enough. You nod, because it is enough. More than enough. Because in this place, flavor isn't something you chase, it's something you find. One roasted root at a time. The quiet doesn't last. Because, of course, there's always another job waiting. And this time, it's the garden. You follow a short path behind the kitchen, winding through a shaded bamboo grove that opens suddenly into neat rows of frozen soil. Raised beds bordered by stone, long trellises tied with hemp twine, and a scattering of straw hats left on pegs. It looks empty now, resting under winter's breath. But come spring, this patch of dirt will feed everyone inside the temple walls. A monk waves you over. He's got a hoe in one hand and a stack of woven baskets in the other. His breath fogs the air, and his sleeves are already dusted with dry earth. We dig today, he says, handing you a basket. Root check. So you dig, turnip by turnip, radish by radish. A slow, careful inventory of the underground pantry. The soil is cold and clumpy, sticking to your fingers like memory. You don't yank the roots. You loosen them gently, brushing off excess dirt and placing each one reverently in the basket, like you're tucking in small, sleeping children. The radishes are fat and knobby. Some are cracked from the freeze. Others are perfect, snow white and heavy with stored sunlight. They'll be sliced, dried, salted, pickled, and in some cases fermented in massive clay ongi jars for spring kimchi. And yes, before you ask, monks eat kimchi. Not the kind that scorches your tongue and makes your nose run. No garlic, no fish sauce, no shrimp paste. Temple kimchi is mild, clean, and cool, fermented with pear juice, mustard leaf, and sometimes green plum extract. It's not about spice. It's about depth, a quiet flavor, like the sound of leaves falling in the forest. You haul your basket back to the courtyard and pass by those very ongi jars. Dozens of them, each one shaped like a buried bell, stained with age, and sealed with heavy stones. If you press your ear close, you almost expect to hear the bubbles of fermentation, the soft chorus of microbes singing their chemical hymn. Historians still argue whether temple fermentation recipes were shared among sects or fiercely guarded. Some say recipes were passed down orally from master to novice. Others suggest temples shared ingredients but not technique, each one crafting its own microbial signature over centuries. Whatever the truth, this much is certain. Monks respected their pickles. You return to the kitchen with your bounty, your hands tingling from cold and satisfaction. One of the kitchen monks lifts a turnip, sniffs it like a wine cork, and nods. "Good batch," he murmurs. "No frost rot." He places it beside a pile of ingredients being prepped for tomorrow's breakfast. Because yes, while you're still digesting this morning's rice, the gears are already turning for the next. There's a pot of soaking soybeans on the hearth, a tub of barley waiting to be ground, and in the corner, a monk is stirring a bubbling cauldron of thick beige paste, doenjang in the making. You watch for a moment as he works the paddle, his face serene despite the obvious strain. The paste glops and hisses. It smells intense, somewhere between miso, compost, and a medieval cheese cave. And yet, you know from your own breakfast bowl that it will mellow into the base of tomorrow's soup. He doesn't look up as he stirs. "You hungry again yet?" he asks. You hesitate, caught. He laughs softly. Always the same answer. Because here's the quiet secret. Monks are often hungry. That's part of the deal. 2 meals a day. No snacks outside the kitchen's offerings. No hoarding. No sneaking. Your hunger becomes something you notice, not something you run from. Like a cloud that follows you without soaking you. But also, let's not romanticize it too much. Hunger still bites, especially after hard labor. And that's why today, you're in luck. "Trial batch," says the kitchen monk, lifting a lid from a side pot. Inside, barley pancakes. John, made from soaked barley flour, shredded radish, wild greens, and a whisper of soy. Cooked on a hot stone with a slick of oil pressed from roasted perilla seeds. You blink. You're not sure if you're hallucinating. He hands you one. Warm, crisp-edged, steaming at the center. You take a bite. The texture is perfect, soft inside, with a delicate crunch around the rim. The radish gives it sweetness. The barley makes it nutty. There's no garlic, no heat, no MSG cheat codes. And yet it sings. You close your eyes, chew slowly, and think, this is breakfast too. Not part of the daily rotation, but offered on special feast days. Or when a new monk is ordained, or when a moon festival comes around. Sometimes it's just a test recipe gone right. "Trial batch," he repeats. "We'll make them again next week." You can help flip. You nod, mouth full, heart fuller, because you're beginning to understand something important. Temple breakfast isn't one dish, or even one moment. It's a cycle, a daily wheel of soaking, grinding, chopping, fermenting, simmering, and washing. It doesn't stop when you're full. It doesn't stop when you're done. It spins forward, quietly, humbly, always one step ahead. You finish your pancake, lick your fingers, and rise to help the next monk carry in a bucket of barley grains. As you pass the back stairs, a cat slips past your feet. Gray, thin, cautious. You freeze. It freezes. You bow. It ignores you. But you both know what's up. There's food inside, and it's always worth the wait. Afternoon slides in without ceremony. The sun has risen past its peak, but no bell has rung, no call resounded. Only the soft shuffle of sandals and the creak of wooden doors mark the hour. Your arms ache faintly, and your stomach is settled into that monkish rhythm. Accept hunger, befriend it, move on. But your mind? Still on breakfast. Specifically on tea, or the thing that passed for it this morning. Earthy, warm, slightly bitter, with an aftertaste that lingered like old books and boiled bark. Not what you'd call comforting, but also not something you could stop sipping. You wander back into the kitchen complex, not to eat, you wouldn't dare, but to watch. Because this is when the tea is made again, this time for evening meditation. And yes, it's deeply connected to breakfast too. In fact, in many Korean monasteries, tea isn't a break from the meal, it's the closing chord. A soft finish to the morning's ritual. Today, the tea is made from roasted barley. Baricha, no cafeína, no sugar, no extras. Just roasted grains steeped in boiling water until the color deepens to honey brown. You lean close as the monk pours the hot water over the roasted barley in a tall clay kettle. Steam bursts upward, scented with toast and soil. The barley crackles slightly, like tiny rocks in a campfire. The whole space fills with warmth, despite the open shutters and winter breeze. Don't boil it too long. The monk says, barely above a whisper. Bitterness grows with time. You file that away. Another lesson, tea-related and otherwise. Barley tea, by the way, is a staple. Not just here, but across Korea, monks, farmers, palace cooks, everyone. Some temples added mugwort or pine needles for depth. Others stuck with pure barley, letting the roasted notes carry the flavor. There are records of barley tea being served even during royal visits to temples, always in humble cups, with no ceremony but deep attention. You're offered a small sip. The tea is warm, almost velvety. It doesn't punch, it nudges, soothes. You feel it in your throat, your chest, your belly, and you get it now. This was the closing note to your rice and radish breakfast. This is how monks digest, not just food, but morning itself. You place the empty cup down and bow slightly. Gratitude. The monk smiles and returns to his work. Outside, a delivery arrives. Not from a supplier, not from a store, but from the mountains. Two monks come down the back path, each carrying a sling filled with pine mushrooms, dried twigs, and, somehow, an entire armful of wild greens, frost-kissed but still very much alive. Winter enamel, one of them says, setting down a pile. For breakfast stew. Enamel, seasoned vegetables, one of the key side dishes you've been eating without even realizing how complex they are. Each green has its own rule book. Fern break must be boiled twice. Bellflower root must be massaged with salt. Spinach, blanch. Dandelion, soak in cold water, then toss in sesame oil and a bit of soy. You help sort the pile. Your fingers sting from the cold. The greens are wiry, tough, clearly survivors. You don't know their names, but each one has been eaten by monks for centuries. Not because they're trendy, but because they grow where nothing else dares. One record from the early Joseon era even mentions temple monks harvesting young pine needles, drying them, and using them in broth when pickled vegetables were in short supply. It wasn't tasty, it wasn't pretty, but it worked. And speaking of pine, there's a pot now, steeping on the side hearth. Not tea this time, pine needle rinse. For rice. A fringe practice, but some temples swore by it. You add a handful of tender needles to the soaking water to lend a faint scent to the rice. Sharp, fresh, almost citrusy. Does it work? Depends on the rice. Depends on the needle. Depends, honestly, on the monk. Historians still argue whether this counts as flavoring or simply as purification. You're distracted by someone carrying a tray of ceramic pots, 10 in total, each one sealed with oiled paper and twine. Soy sauces, aged, some for 6 months, others for years. The kitchen master himself appears. He walks slowly, reverently, placing each pot on a wooden shelf beneath a hand-painted scroll of the Bodhisattva of compassion. You'll taste this one, he says, patting a pot that's been darkened with time. Just a drop. Tomorrow's breakfast stew. You raise an eyebrow. Stew? For breakfast? Oh yes. Because remember, Korean monks don't just eat rice and side dishes. There's often a soup or stew involved. And in winter, it's usually thick, hot, and humble. Tomorrow's is made from wild greens, fermented bean paste, and, if the cook is generous, a pinch of ground sesame seed for depth. The soy sauce is the final flourish. A single spoonful, stirred in just before the pot, is pulled from the flame. You watch him unseal the jar and stir it slowly. It smells like 1,000 winters. Deep, woody, salty, with a hint of something sweet and burned and good. You don't dare ask for a taste, but you do breathe deeper. Let the scent fill you. Let it be the meal. And for a second, you're full again. Not in the stomach, in the chest, in the spine. This, you realize, is temple cuisine. Not flashy, not filling always, but whole, balanced. And as you step out of the kitchen and into the cold light of late afternoon, the mountains ahead turn soft gold, and the wind carries the scent of pine, barley, and the memory of rice. Breakfast lingers. Even now, you return to the courtyard, just as the bell rings for meditation. It's not loud, not urgent, just a gentle toll that rolls down from the main hall like fog. One deep note, then silence. Another, then nothing, like the mountain itself exhaling. You follow the others to the Dharma hall, barefoot now, because breakfast is over, tea is over, and shoes belong outside of stillness. The floor is cool beneath your feet. Woven mats stretch wall to wall, simple and faded. Each monk takes their place, folding knees over knees, backs upright, hands resting in their laps like forgotten stones. No one speaks. No one even clears their throat. You take your seat near the back. Try not to creak or crack or wobble. Your stomach grumbles slightly, an echo, not a plea. It has already learned the new tempo. The abbot enters. He bows, they bow, you bow. And then silence. No chanting, no sentiments, just breath, just spine, just stillness. Now, what does this have to do with breakfast? Everything. Because digestion isn't just physical here, it's spiritual. This period of quiet, this hour of controlled breathing and upright sitting is how the body completes the meal. Movement follows food, but stillness completes it. Like punctuation after a sentence, like a bow after a meal. And also, let's be honest, it keeps you from crashing too hard into that mid-morning nap urge. A sleepy novice to your right sways forward, catches himself, and then resumes meditating with the intensity of someone pretending to be completely alert. We've all been there. You fight your own eyelids for a few minutes. Not because you're bored, but because your body is finally safe enough to want sleep. That's the effect of this rhythm. Rice, roots, tea, breath. No noisy, no sugar, no hashi. Just enough of everything. And this right here, this long, unbroken silence, is considered part of the monastic digestive system. It's the final course. There's even a fringe theory among temple historians that early Zen monks believed post-meal meditation helped burn karma absorbed from food, especially if that food was grown or gathered through non-monk labor. The idea being that through stillness, you paid back any invisible debt carried in your meal. Historians still argue whether this was literal or symbolic, whether monks truly believed they could rebalance their karmic books with posture and silence, or whether it was simply a way to honor the life cycle of food without wasting time. Either way, your legs have gone numb, but still you sit. A bell rings, sharp, once, and everyone bows slowly, then stands even more slowly. One by one, they file out. Not a word spoken. You follow. Outside, the air is somehow clearer, cleaner. The last fog of morning has lifted, and now the blue sky is high and clean, like a freshly rinsed bowl. It smells of pine smoke and cold stone. Lunch isn't until later, but you don't mind, because breakfast lingers, not as taste, but as atmosphere. It sits in your bones, in the cushion of your belly, in the quiet thrum behind your ribs. You decide to help with firewood, not because you're told to, but because you get it now. This system runs on invisible effort. Every root, every grain, every drop of barley tea was touched by a dozen hands before reaching your bowl. And now it's your turn. The woodshed sits low on the eastern slope. A monk hands you a bamboo frame to carry logs on your back, secured with thick hemp rope. You bend, brace, rise. The weight surprises you. It's not impossible, but it's present, like a small animal sleeping between your shoulder blades. You walk carefully, one step at a time, boots crunching on packed snow and pebbles. Each log smells like moss and winter, and as you stack them by the kitchen's back hearth, you notice something important. Tomorrow's breakfast begins now, with this firewood, with the hands that carry it, with the backs that bend under it. And, strangely, you don't mind at all, because your own belly, once so obsessed with being full, is now content with being useful. Inside, another monk stirs a cauldron of soaking grains. Another slices green onion stalks down to the whisper thin. Another lays kelp strips in hot water to draw out their gentle sea sweetness. The kitchen doesn't rest. It just waits. And you feel ready. Not full, but fed. And maybe that's more than enough. Afternoon deepens, and with it, the temperature drops. The sun no longer warms, only lights. Shadows stretch across the courtyard, painting the stone tiles in long, slow bands. A few monks tend the herb garden, now more frost than foliage, while others sweep walkways clear of dry leaves and drifting straw. You've been assigned to clean rice. Again? Yes, again. Because rice doesn't clean itself. And in temples, it's done by hand. No rinsing machines, no shortcuts. Just fingers, water, and patience. You sit at the long wooden table beside a low stone basin. The rice is stored in large cloth sacks, cool and slightly dusty. A monk opens one and pours out a soft hill of short grain white. You reach in, hands already stiff from the cold. Each grain is tiny, perfect, deceptively simple. But this process matters. Temple rice is rarely just rinsed once. It's washed 5, 6, even 7 times until the water runs nearly clear. Not sparkling, just calm. So you start. You swirl the rice with an open palm, pressing gently, lifting, circling. The grains slip through your fingers with a sound like soft sand. The water turns milky. You drain it and do it again. And again. The repetition becomes its own form of meditation. You don't talk. You don't sing. You breathe in, swirl out, rinse. A cat watches you from a fence. The same one probably. Wise. Judgy. Rice prep is not flashy, but it's crucial because this is what the monks will eat tomorrow morning and the next and the next. Clean rice means no grit, no bitterness, no hidden pests. It's respecting grain form. And this rice isn't plain, no matter what outsiders think. It can be cooked with millet, barley, or even sorghum. Some temples mix in red beans on special days, patbab, which turns the rice a gentle pink, symbolizing joy and health. You ask a nearby monk if they ever serve white rice alone. Only if we're being punished, he replies, deadpan. You wait for a smile. He doesn't give you one, but he does wink. That counts. You finish the rinsing. The water is clear enough to reflect your face. Muddy hair, wind-chapped cheeks, a grain of rice stuck to your nose. You leave it there. The rinsed rice is left to rest, slightly drained before it's steamed. Not boiled, not pressure cooked. Steamed, over wood fire, in a tall, lidded stone vessel that looks like something a wizard might use to trap a demon. It takes time, but the result is grains that are tender, not mushy. Separate but not dry. Chewy, warming, the kind of food you feel between bites. And here's the real twist. Monks believe you can taste rushed rice. That if it's steamed too hot, or rinsed too short, or left too long in the cold, it carries that energy. Hasty, distracted, unkind. So yes, even the rice's mood swings. And you're learning to listen. You take a break in the shade, sipping hot water from a chipped ceramic cup. No tea this time, just water, faintly earthy from the clay vessel it was boiled in. It feels like drinking from a mountain. Nearby, a younger monk is roasting black sesame seeds in a shallow pan over charcoal. The seeds dance and pop, releasing that deep, nutty aroma you now associate with comfort. He tosses in a few pinches of coarse salt and grins. For the morning porridge, he says. Porridge, called juk, is another breakfast staple. Thinner than rice, but richer in warmth. Sometimes it's made with millet and chestnuts. Other times with sweet potato, pumpkin, or even mung beans. The toppings vary: sesame, pine nuts, shredded seaweed, or thin slices of fermented radish. You'd think porridge would be dull, but here it's not just fuel, it's therapy. Especially on cold mornings. Especially for older monks with bad teeth. Especially for anyone who's feeling, as one kitchen monk puts it, a little too attached to the material world. You watch as he spoons the roasted sesame into a clay jar, then caps it with a twist of hemp string. No label, just memory. He knows which jar is which by smell alone. There's a rhythm here you're only just beginning to hear. A daily music without melody. Scrub, rinse, chop, stir, steam, sweet, bow, breathe. And everything feeds into breakfast. Because it's not just a meal. It's the center pole of the temple's tent. The reason people get up before the sun. The reward for silence. The fruit of labor. The proof that nature, patience, and effort can turn cold stone and dirty root into something warm, nourishing, and kind. It's a bowl of rice and radish soup. It's a sip of tea. It's your fingers rinsing white grains until they glow. It's porridge with toasted sesame. It's the act of preparing, not just food, but yourself. You stand up, stretch your back, and carry the rinsed rice to the storeroom, where it will wait in a lidded basket until dawn. A monk thanks you without words, just a short bow. And then he points to the broom. Yes, even after rice, there's always more. You sweep in silence, smiling, because tomorrow's breakfast, it's already begun. The broom is heavier than expected, not in weight. It's just bundles of straw tied to a wooden shaft, but in mood. Because sweeping here is more than tidying up. It's intention. You're not just chasing dust and pine needles. You're clearing space. For calm, for stillness, for breakfast prep. Your strokes become slower, more deliberate. And with every push, the courtyard feels a little more in order. You pause by the woodpile. A monk is stacking logs, knotting them into tight, crisscrossing towers like a game of wooden Jenga played by a very serious carpenter. He gestures toward the logs with a knowing glance. Tomorrow's rice fire, he murmurs. You nod. It's the third time today someone said that. Tomorrow's rice, tomorrow's breakfast, tomorrow's tea. Everything loops back to that early meal, as though the rest of the day only exists to prepare for it. You set down the broom and step into the fermentation room. Yes, there's a room, because monks, like their meals, believe in the power of patience, especially when it comes to jang, those age-fermented cornerstones of Korean flavor, soy sauce, ganjang, soybean paste, doenjang, and chili paste, gochujang. Although monks don't use garlic or alliums, too stimulating for the mind, they say they use jang in nearly everything else. Inside, the air is cool and dark and smells like deep thyme. Large clay jars line the shelves, each one sealed, labeled in brushstroke hanja, dated months or even years ago. These jars aren't just ingredients, they're stories. Tiny microbial novels aging in silence. You watch as a senior monk lifts the lid of a doenjang jar. A puff of funk escapes, earthy, savory, sharp, like someone's idea of cheese turned into soil. He stirs slowly with a wooden paddle. The paste is thick and brown, rippling like lava. Breakfast stew, he says. 3-day batch. Doenjang isn't thrown together. It starts with meju, blocks of boiled, mashed soybeans dried, and aged until they look like masonry bricks. These are hung on ropes in the kitchen rafters for weeks, sometimes months, to gather wild bacteria. Later, they're submerged in brine, broken down, and transformed into paste and soy sauce. Historians still argue whether early monks discovered this by accident or brilliant fermentation planning. But either way, this is where umami begins. You're invited to help ladle paste into a smaller pot, tomorrow's portion. It's heavy, sticky. You catch a whiff and flinch, then recover with a sheepish nod. Too strong, the monk asks. Wait until you taste it. You return to the courtyard, carrying the pot, like it's made of gold. Across the stone path, a group of monks are cleaning wild root vegetables harvested earlier that morning. Burdock, arrowroot, lotus root. Each one with a different texture, color, and secret. Burdock looks like a tree branch, gnarled and hairy. Arrowroot is pale, thick, and starchy. Lotus root slices like a strange floral wheel. They're not breakfast staples every day, but when available, they're gently boiled, seasoned with soy or sesame oil, and served cold. Texture matters here. The goal isn't richness, but balance. A little crunch, a little chew, a whisper of earth. One monk grins at you and lifts a lotus root sliced to the sun. Its holes cast soft shadows on his face. Looks like a wheel, you say, or a mandala, he replies. He's not joking. You help scrub arrowroot with a small rice bristle brush. The skin peels away, revealing a white interior that smells faintly like damp paper and mineral. You imagine it cooked with barley and a splash of aged soy. Comfort food from another century. Suddenly, a bell chimes in the kitchen. Salt hour, someone calls. You don't know what that means, but you're curious. Turns out, once a week, a small batch of temple salt is purified and roasted over low flame. Not just for seasoning, but for energy. Some say roasted salt carries warmth into the body, especially on bitter winter mornings. One legend claims that monks in the Goryeo period used salt as a mild medicine, steeping it in hot water to fight fatigue. A pot sits on the fire, lined with paper and filled with grayish salt. The flames underneath are barely visible, more ember than fire. The salt crackles quietly. A monk lifts the lid and stirs it with a bone spoon. Tomorrow's radish, he says. You tilt your head. He smiles. Roasted salt. For breakfast, radish slices. That tangy, firm pickled radish you've been eating all week? It starts with salt, roasted, cooled, pressed in a sliced radish with vinegar and sun-dried chili threads. Not spicy, just bright. A tiny counterpoint to the rice. You help label the jar. Tie the cloth cover. Place on a shelf. It joins dozens of others. Every monk has their own salt batch, their own chili thread, their own quiet signature. This isn't a factory, it's a choir, and each hand brings a note. You pause in the doorway and look out at the courtyard. A monk sweeps in slow arcs. Another tends a small fire. The sun sinks lower, casting gold along the walls. Every movement is food. Even now, especially now, you return to the kitchen and wash your hand again. The water is cold, but your fingers are warm. And your belly? Empty, but expectant. Darkness begins to slip down the mountain like a woolen curtain. The wind quiets. The birds tuck themselves away, and the temple exhales. Dinner is long over. Modest, muted, not very different from breakfast. A bowl of rice, perhaps some mild soup, a few salted greens. The evening bell echoes once more, and now the temple becomes still. Still, but not asleep, because for those in the kitchen, tomorrow's breakfast is already in motion. You've been invited back to the pantry, where a monk is measuring millet into a wide clay bowl. The grains glow faintly in the lamplight, golden and pale as candle wax. We steam it at dawn, he says, but it soaks overnight. Softer on the stomach, kinder to the body. You nod, rubbing your own belly in sympathy. He adds a pinch of barley, then a splash of water. Then he covers the bowl with a lid made from woven bamboo. This, he says, is how you prepare to wake up well. You carry the bowl to the main kitchen, where another monk is grating dried jujubes with a stone rasp. The scent is fruity, woody, almost like dates left too long in the sun. They'll be added to the millet tomorrow, not for sweetness exactly, but for depth, for something quiet and warm at the edge of the bowl. You'll see, he says, eyes crinkling. It tastes like a memory. You grin. That's a very monkish thing to say. Next to him, a tall pot simmers gently. Inside is a root stew made from taraji, balloon flower root. Tough, fibrous, slightly bitter. It's being boiled with miso, a dash of sesame oil, and a slice of dried mushroom the size of your hand. The monk stirs with a long-handled wooden paddle. Tomorrow's broth, he says, for those who need strength. And here's the truth. Some monks are older, some are ill, some are just not morning people. So breakfast isn't always identical. There's room for variation. A softer porridge, a clearer soup, a second scoop of rice for someone who'll be hauling timber at dawn. Historians still argue whether temples followed strict, uniform meal plans or allowed for personal tailoring. Some say uniformity was spiritual discipline. Others argue that compassion was also a rule, and that compassion sometimes means second helpings. Either way, what's clear is this. No one is left hungry, just hungry enough. Another monk enters, carrying a clay pot covered in wax cloth. He peels it back and reveals something red, sticky, glinting under the lantern. Gochujang. Yes, monks eat chili paste. No garlic, remember, but chili? In small amounts, yes. Especially in colder regions where warmth is welcome. This batch is mild, fermented with glutinous rice and powdered soybean. It smells sweet, with a whisper of fire at the edge. They'll mix it into rice tomorrow for flavor, or serve on the side with blanched greens. Balance, the monk says, seeing your raised eyebrows. Not fire. Warmth. You help ladle a spoonful into a small stone jar. It's labeled in brush ink. Winter batch, month 5. You carefully set it next to the others. It joins a collection of sauces that could probably launch their own religion. The lamp flickers. You yawn. Someone hands you a mug of warm grain tea, baricha. No caffeine, just roasted barley steeped in boiled mountain water. The flavor is nutty, toasty, and grounding, like drinking a memory of the earth. You sip slowly, cupping the ceramic to warm your hands. Drink slowly, the monk says. It counts as a meal if you think hard enough. He's probably joking. Maybe. You step outside for air. The stars have stitched themselves across the sky like someone sewed silver into velvet. The temple roofs glisten faintly with frost. Somewhere in the dark, a night bird sings once, then falls quiet. You walk slowly, mug in hand, back to your room. Your feet remember the stone paths now. You avoid the dip by the firewood shed. You step gently past the main hall. You bow as you pass the little shrine to the kitchen bodhisattva, where someone has left a fresh pear. It all makes sense now. The rice, the roots, the silence, the effort. None of it is random. It's a design, a discipline, a devotion that happens not just at the altar, but over boiling pots, wooden ladles, and baskets of soaking grains. Breakfast isn't a pause between morning and chores. It is the morning. It's how you practice care, how you honor time, how you listen with your body instead of your ears. Inside your room, you fold yourself under the thick blanket. The floor beneath is warm, heated by the fire you helped stoke earlier, the same fire that will be used to steam tomorrow's rice. You place the empty mug beside your bedding and lie back. Your stomach isn't full, but it's not empty either. It's just ready. You close your eyes, and somewhere, not far from here, a monk stirs a pot. He's thinking of you, of all of you, the ones who wake quietly to do this all again. The temple wakes before you do. There's no rooster, no alarm, no gentle harp tones from a phone. Just the soft creak of floorboards, the distant swish of robes, the low thunk of wood against stone as the first monk slides open the kitchen doors. You hear it from your bedding, half awake, warm beneath the quilt. For a moment, you consider pretending to sleep. But the smell gets you. It's the rice, steaming, and it smells like hope. You throw on your robe and step out. The air is cold enough to catch in your throat, but not cruel. The pre-dawn sky is an inky navy, stars still stubborn. A ribbon of frost lies across the grass. The fire from the kitchen chimney curls slowly upward, like a dragon just waking. You follow the scent of breakfast. Inside, the kitchen is alive but soft. The light is warm. Lanterns hang low, casting golden halos on wooden walls. A monk fans the fire under the rice steamer, crouched low, face glowing. Another monk stirs a bubbling pot of juk, millet porridge, pale and thick, flecked with sesame. You're handed a ladle. No one speaks. You join in. The millet is soft now, giving under your spoon like pudding. You stir in slow figure eights, careful not to scorch the bottom. A monk nearby slices dried jujubes into thin petals and drops them into the pot. They melt into the porridge, tinting it amber. A third monk opens a jar of pickled radish. The scent is sweet sharp, vinegar, sugar, and thyme. He fans his nose with mock alarm. You both smile. And then the bell. One low, echoing note that vibrates through your bones. It's time. Not let's eat. Not hurry up. Just time. The breakfast bowls are lined up on a long wooden table, waiting. Each one handmade, slightly different, some cracked, some chipped, none perfect. Each with its own history. You choose one carefully, running your thumb along the edge. Into the bowl goes a ladle of millet juk, creamy and glistening. A sprinkle of toasted sesame. A few slices of pickled radish. A dollop of miso broth from last night's balloon flower stew. And a single jujube, floating like a tiny red moon. That's it. No eggs. No coffee. No meat. No pastries. No avocado toast. No indulgence. But somehow it's enough. You follow the others into the small dining hall. The floor is warm beneath your knees. You sit Seiza style, knees tucked, posture straight, and wait. There's a silence before breakfast. Not for prayers, exactly, but for presence. For gratitude. For remembering that someone harvested this grain. That someone woke up early to tend the fire. That a dozen hands moved so this one bowl could reach yours. You lower your head. Breathe in the steam. Then, 3 slow spoonfuls. No talking, just eating. And in that quiet, joy. Not loud, not giddy, but full-body joy. The kind that comes from being entirely here. The juk is warm and nutty. The sesame gives a little crunch. The radish, tangy and crisp, keeps things awake. The jujube is sweet, rich, like a reward for paying attention. You don't rush. No one does. You're not eating to finish. You're eating to be. And if you spill, that's okay. A monk hands you a cloth. No words. You bow slightly. He bows back. Historians still argue whether early temple meals were this refined, or if monks originally ate more like peasants, whatever was available, however it came. Some suggest that elegance came later, as temples became centers of culture, not just religion. Either way, this feels like both. Simple, but deliberate. Modest, but radiant. A monk across from you finishes first. He folds his cloth napkin and sets his bowl aside. No scraping, no slurping, just grace. Eventually, you do the same. Outside, light is creeping over the ridgeline. The frost melts in delicate arcs across the stone. A pair of sparrows argue on the roof. The kitchen smoke rises white into morning. You help carry bowls back to the washing station. Yes, even after all that, there are dishes. They're scrubbed with rice water and sand, rinsed in cold spring water, and placed upside down on a low shelf to dry. A monk hums while scrubbing. The melody is familiar. You realize it's the same rhythm as the rice washing swirl. Somewhere in the kitchen, a new batch of barley tea begins to boil, and the cycle, like the sun, starts over. Breakfast isn't the start of the day. It's the center, the anchor, the one thing that doesn't change, even as everything else does. You step outside into morning light. The valley is gold now. Mist curls through pine. The world feels warm, even if it's not. And in your belly, a quiet fire burns. After breakfast, there's a subtle shift in the air. The energy doesn't surge. It unfolds like a blanket being shaken out over the day. Monks begin dispersing, robes rustling like autumn leaves, each moving toward their assigned duties. You linger for a moment, holding the memory of warm millet and soft jujube in your chest like a secret. But breakfast isn't truly over, not yet. You're handed a small bowl and led behind the main kitchen to a low, narrow platform. It's nothing fancy, just a stone sink, a ladle, and a single jar. The monk next to you gestures silently, and you understand. This is the final step, the water offering. A few spoonfuls of clean water are swirled gently in the bowl, catching the last traces of porridge. Then you tip it toward a stone channel that runs toward a patch of grass and herbs. Nothing wasted, not even a smear of sesame. This ritual isn't about hygiene. It's about humility, about not clinging to even the smallest scrap. It's about releasing the last bite, mentally and physically. A final bow. Then, finally, you're done. But something unexpected happens. As you return the bowl to the shelf, a younger monk presses something into your hand. A flat disc wrapped in parchment. It's a snack, sort of. A pressed rice cracker made from leftover grains, dried, then roasted over a low fire. It smells faintly of smoke and salt. Crunchy, brittle, humble. For mid-morning, he says, then disappears into the garden like a breeze with feet. You tuck it into your sleeve. A backup plan, just in case your stomach realizes how early you ate. The sun is higher now, touching the temple eaves with honeyed light. You wander through the gardens, your steps slow, your mind quiet. Somewhere, a broom is sweeping. Somewhere else, a bell chimes. But here, among the cabbages and curled kale leaves, it's just you. You pass a small raised bed filled with young radishes, their leafy tops fluttering. A wooden sign marks them as winter crop. A monk kneels nearby, loosening the soil with a claw-shaped iron rake. He gestures you closer. Want to help? You crouch beside him, fingers in the earth. It's cool, slightly damp. You dig gently around the radish base, careful not to snap the root. There's no rush. One by one, you and the monk lift them out, small, perfect, streaked with pale pink and white. He sets one aside. Pickle, he says, for next week. So here's something to note. Breakfast doesn't begin at dawn. Not really. It begins now with radishes being pulled, or with herbs being snipped, or with rice being sorted. Breakfast, at its heart, is always in progress. Historians still debate whether ancient temple life in Korea was truly as cyclical and integrated as it seems in modern reenactments. Some argue that periods of war or scarcity interrupted these quiet routines. Others suggest the discipline was stronger in the past, not weaker. You lean toward believing in the continuity, because standing here, fingers dusty, cheeks cool, radishes in hand, it feels eternal, unrushed, repeating. The monk points to a small bush of perilla growing beside the radishes. Leaves for wrapping, he says. Morning greens. They'll be picked, washed, and served alongside rice. No dressing, no salsa, just leaf and grain. Texture and contrast. You rub a leaf between your fingers. It smells like mint, basil, and forest. Not loud, not flashy, but alive. A distant shout calls the monk away, and you're left alone in the garden. You pull the rice cracker from your sleeve. Crunch. It shatters like brittle glass between your teeth, releasing a tiny burst of toasted memory. You close your eyes. It tastes exactly like this place. Behind you, monks begin gathering in the courtyard for morning meditation. You don't follow, not yet. Instead, you wander toward the herb shed. Inside, wonder. Bundles hang from the rafters like botanical chandeliers. Dried mugwort, chrysanthemum, licorice root, slices of ginseng the color of old honey. The room smells like sleep, like old books and new firewood. A monk inside is grinding something with a stone mortar. For digestive tea, he says without looking up. Breakfast follows you after all. You grin. He's not wrong. You ask what's in the blend. Roasted barley, mint, a pinch of roasted salt, a pause, and one dried persimmon if someone's lucky. You help tie a few herb bundles. The fibers scratch your fingers and the twine creaks under tension. The monk sets a wrapped bundle aside. For tomorrow, he says, always tomorrow, always next breakfast. Even here, surrounded by drying leaves and powdery roots, the future is being seasoned. You step outside and squint at the light. It's mid-morning now. The sun is bright, but not hot. The air carries the smell of smoke and mountain pine. You breathe deeply and feel your body respond. Not with hunger, not with fullness, but with balance. Not bad. You think for a bowl of porridge and a few pickled greens. Not bad at all. You return to the courtyard just in time to hear the tail end of a chant. Low, even steady. The monks are still seated in their rows, robes folded like origami, heads bowed. No one notices you slipping in at the edge. Or maybe they do, and simply don't mind. You sit. The stone beneath you is cool. The air is still. And your stomach, which earlier was a small flicker of flame, is now a quiet ember, settled, content. Then something unexpected happens. Your body begins to hum. Not literally, of course, but that same quiet energy that was poured into the porridge and the tea and the pickled radish seems to be echoing inside your bones. You realize that it isn't just what you ate, it's how you ate. Slowly, with attention, with gratitude. And that changes things. Breakfast wasn't fuel. It was a reset. You close your eyes and let the silence settle over you like morning mist. A wind brushes past your cheek. The scent of roasted barley lingers on your sleeve. Somewhere a bird rustles in the rafters. And then a whisper of movement. The monks begin to rise. No rus, no chater. Just the sound of feet on stone, cloth brushing cloth. You stand too, but your guide, yes, the one from yesterday, the same one who handed you barley tea and called millet a memory, beckons you aside. We're making soy milk, he says. You follow him around the side of the kitchen, where a wooden trough is already half filled with pale soybeans, soaked soft overnight. A second monk is cranking a heavy stone mill. You watch, fascinated, as the soaked beans turn to pulp beneath the grinding stone. Water is added, then a cloth filter, and slowly, from the bottom of a gourd-shaped funnel, a thin, creamy stream begins to pour. It's hot, slightly frothy, and smells clean, like fresh laundry or warm straw. You're handed a wooden cup. You sip and blink. It's nothing like the soy milk you know. This is gentler, earthier, a little beany, yes, but also somehow sweet, without sugar, without flavoring. Just the bean itself, at peace. You glance at the monk. He smiles. Everything tastes like itself when you don't interrupt it. Classic monk wisdom. The rest of the soy milk is poured into a wide clay pot and placed beside a small fire. It will be stirred gently until it thickens, and from it, if left to settle, comes tofu. Not for breakfast, usually. That's a lunch affair. But sometimes, in cold seasons, a cube or two of soft tofu sneaks into the morning broth. Historians still argue whether tofu was common in early Korean temples or adopted more fully during later Buddhist waves. Some records suggest Chinese influence. Others claim it was an independent development. Either way, its presence here feels inevitable. You help stir. Not because they ask, but because your hands are empty. And here, empty hands are a signal. Use me. The monk adds a pinch of salt. Another monk drops in a single slice of ginger. The scent lifts, warm and sharp. This, he says, is for the older monks, the ones who need a little more warmth in their bellies. You smile. You're starting to understand. Breakfast isn't one thing. It's many small kindnesses disguised as ingredients. While the soy simmers, you're led back to the rear storage room. Smaller, darker, filled with rows of stone crocks half buried in the ground. Jangdokdi, fermentation jars. And inside them, magic. One holds doenjang, fermented soybean paste, salty, funky, the beating heart of half the temple's meals. Another holds cheonggukjang, a quicker fermenting, much smellier cousin that even the monks admit takes a specific kind of mind to enjoy. You take their word for it. And then there's meju, the crumbled blocks of dried soybeans that form the base of everything. They smell like hay, sweat, and potential. They hang from the ceiling in twine nets, aging slowly, learning to become useful. A monk pats one of the jars. Breakfast starts here, he says. You believe him. It's not just grains and greens. It's a web, a system, 1,000 quiet choices layered over time. You ask how long some of these have been aging. He shrugs. This batch, 2 winters, maybe 3. The one next to it, older than you. You glance at the jar with new respect. It stares back serene. From somewhere nearby, a bell sounds. Not the morning bell, but a softer one. Time for work rotation to shift. Time for someone else to take over the soy milk stirring. You're gently nudged toward the door. You've had enough kitchen for today, someone says, not unkindly. You bow. They bow. It's all very graceful, very formal. But as you step back out into the daylight, you hear someone chuckle softly. Come back when we make the red bean porridge, they say. That's when things get wild. You promise you will. The morning sun is higher now, but still soft. You walk slowly past the laundry line where damp robes sway like sails. Past the woodpile. Past the compost heap, where the temple's waste becomes the next cycle's soil. Even here, compost. A reminder that nothing's ever really thrown away. That breakfast never really ends. It just transforms. Like millet into memory. Like jujubes into warmth. Like you into something softer than before. The temple slows again around midday, but that doesn't mean silence. It means rhythm. You find yourself carrying a woven basket full of perilla leaves, those same ones from the garden earlier, toward a small courtyard table. A pair of monks are already seated there, peeling garlic. Their fingers move fast, practiced like piano players trained on cloves instead of keys. They nod as you approach. One pats the bench beside him. You sit. Without a word, a pile of garlic heads appears in front of you. And now, you're in the garlic club. The cloves are small and strong. Your fingers quickly pick up the scent. Sharp, vegetal, a little spicy. There's no avoiding it. The temple will smell of garlic until dusk. You peel, and peel, and peel. The monk beside you chuckles softly. This is breakfast too, he says. Next week's. And you get it. Again, every quiet task here is feeding something. Soon the garlic will be crushed, pickled in brine, maybe ground into paste, or pan-wilted for a light stir-fry. None of it fancy, all of it necessary. The sun creeps across the stone. The basket fills. Your thumbs are a little raw, but your heart feels fine. The conversation drifts to stories. One monk tells you that in his novice days, he once mistook burdock root for firewood and got scolded for burning dinner. Another says his worst kitchen sin was under-fermenting soybean paste and making the entire temple smell like wet socks. You laugh with them. Then the younger monk leans in. Want to help press the sesame oil? You're not sure if it's a joke or an invitation. It's both. You follow them into a low-roof shed at the temple's edge. Inside, a hand-cranked oil press, a stack of roasted sesame seeds cooling in a wide bamboo tray, and a deep wooden bowl ready to catch liquid gold. One monk pours the seeds into the press. You take the crank. It isn't easy. The handle groans as you push, your arms protesting. But slowly, surely, the oil begins to drip, thick amber, glistening. It smells like toast and sunlight. You can barely believe this is part of the same breakfast cycle. But it is. Later, this oil might be brushed lightly onto rice before steaming, or used to saute bitter greens just enough to take the edge off, or even drizzled over the juk for a slightly nutty twist. Too much is bad, the monk warns. Just 1 drop is good. 2 is greedy. You keep cranking. You realize, somewhere in the middle of your 3rd rotation, that you're sweating. Not from the heat, from the work. This is the thing no one mentions when talking about simple temple life. It's hard. Not punishing, not cruel, but honest. You feel everything. The sore thumbs, the garlic-scented robe, the sesame oil slipping into the bowl, the warm breath of effort rising from your chest. Historians still debate whether temple breakfasts were this labor-intensive in earlier centuries. Some say modern temples have revived old methods for educational or spiritual reasons. Others argue that historically, monks always worked this hard, and the simplicity just hid the sweat. Either way, it feels right. The press is emptied, the bowl now half full. A lid goes on. The oil is labeled with a date, and the monks agree. This batch will be used sparingly. For when something needs remembering, one says. Back outside, the courtyard hums. The midday light gleams across the rooftops, reflecting off ceramic tiles like polished armor. You return your basket. Someone has set out barley tea again. You sip, this time noticing the faint smoky aftertaste. Probably from the pan roasting. Probably from the same pan you helped scrub yesterday. Everything connects. You wander through a shaded path lined with bamboo. At the far end, a small side hall. Inside, 3 older monks sit quietly folding napkins. But not napkins like you're thinking. These are square cloths, worn but clean, used to wrap bowls to lay out small portions to serve as personal table settings. They're folded with origami precision. You're handed one. You fold, and fold, and fold. It's like a ceremony made of creases. The monk beside you gestures to a row of completed cloths. We use these at breakfast, so we eat slowly, he says. So we remember. You're starting to believe remembering is the main ingredient in every meal here. The cloth you fold will cradle someone's breakfast tomorrow. Someone who might sit exactly where you sat. Someone who might marvel at the sesame oil. Someone who might whisper thanks before the first spoonful. It makes you slow your folding. It makes you care. By the time you finish, your hands ache again. But it's the best kind of tired. Outside, clouds are moving in. A slight chill drifts down from the mountains. Someone calls for help storing the perilla. You rise, ready to go, but a hand touches your sleeve. It's the same monk from this morning, the one with the rice cracker. He presses another into your palm. This one smells of roasted soybean and seaweed. For tomorrow, he says, and vanishes. The light is starting to change now. Less gold, more silver. The sky, once washed in honey, shifts toward a pearly overcast that suggests evening isn't far. And yet, the work continues quietly and without fanfare. You find yourself in a storage room, tucked behind the main kitchen. It's cooler here, shaded by thick earthen walls. Clay jars line the shelves, and the faint scent of kelp and rice bran hangs in the air like the ghost of yesterday's meals. A monk is hunched over a low table, slicing lotus root into coins so thin you can see the knife's shadow through them. Each disc is carefully layered with a sprig of fern and a drizzle of syrup made from malted barley. You ask what it's for. Tomorrow's garnish, he replies. Lotus brings clarity. You can't help but laugh softly. A root that tastes a little like water and wood chips is also somehow a symbol of enlightenment. That's breakfast logic at its finest. He lets you slice a few. The lotus root squeaks slightly under the blade, leaving damp, pale trails across the wooden board. There's no rush. The monk seems perfectly content to spend an hour preparing something that will be eaten in seconds. Do you ever get tired of it? You ask. He doesn't look up. Only when I rush. A perfect answer, and one that sticks with you. Because now you understand, this isn't just cooking. It's devotion in disguise. Every slice, every grain, every spoonful of salted turnip is an offering. Not to a deity, not to some hungry ghost, but to the present moment. Historians still argue whether these layers of mindfulness were baked into temple life from the beginning or developed gradually as part of Zen, Buddhist influence. Some point to early texts that mention eating as a form of meditation. Others argue it's a modern interpretation projected backward. But as your knife glides through lotus, you don't need a citation. You feel it. The monk beside you begins folding parchment around the slices. You help. Each packet is placed in a wooden tray and carried out toward the cold room. Not a refrigerator, just a shaded annex with thick stone walls and windows that face away from the sun. Inside, other trays wait: cooked burdock, pickled bean sprouts, rolled kelp. All quiet, all patient. Tomorrow's breakfast is already watching you. You take a breath and realize you don't even know what day it is, which is kind of the point. Here, time is measuring grains, not hours. In infusions, not schedules. The rhythms are natural, organic. You don't count down to the next thing, you unfold into it. Outside, the bell chimes again. Evening chores begin, but your part is done. You walk the long path around the main hall, where early stars blink in the pale sky. Smoke rises from a small stove. Somewhere, a bowl is being scrubbed with a rice bran cloth, the same way it's been done for centuries. You head toward your sleeping quarters. Your robe smells faintly of sesame and onion shoots. Not unpleasant, just honest. At the threshold, you pause. A cat, yes, there's a temple cat, sits nearby, licking its paw, pretending not to notice you. You wonder if even it knows the breakfast schedule. You enter the sleeping room. It's spare. A thin mat, a folded quilt, a wooden chest with a single drawer. But it's enough. More than enough. You lie back and stretch your arms. They ache in that good, heavy way. In your belly, though it's been hours since the millet and jujubes and barley tea, feels content. Not stuffed, not wanting, just balanced. That's the thing they never tell you about temple food. It's not meant to impress you. It's meant to support you, to hold you, to remind you that the world doesn't need to be loud to be nourishing. You close your eyes. You think about tomorrow's lotus root, and the rice soaking in water even now, and the cat who might steal a radish if no one's watching, and that monk who always knows when to slip you a snack. And you think softly, yes, this is enough. The night deepens, soft as a folded robe. The air grows still. The last clang of a ladle has faded. The last step on the stone path gone quiet. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pot still simmers with tomorrow's broth, left to steep in silence. You lie in the dark, belly warm, breath slow. The scent of pine and smoke drifts through a paper screen. The stars are out now, distant, cold, but steady. And your body remembers. Today, you cooked with your hands, worked with your back, ate with your full attention. You weren't distracted. You weren't hurried. You were here, and that matters. You hear the rustle of a quilt in the next room. A gentle cough, the sigh of floorboards giving in to sleep. These are the lullabies of the monastery. No chanting, no bells, just the hum of peace, low and wide and calm. Tomorrow, you'll rise before the sun. You'll lift a wooden lid, smell steam rising from a fresh pot of rice, and know it's starting again. Not repeating, beginning. The first spoonful will be quiet. The second will be grateful. The third will remind you that life, real, honest life, can be tasted in the simplest things: a jujube, a mushroom, a cup of tea. You shift beneath the quilt. The air cools your cheeks. The floor supports your back. And as you drift off, one final thought settles like rice and water. Clean, plain, warm, enough.